Днес нашето студио изглежда малко по-особено, тъй като гостът, който сме поканили, не желае лицето му да бъде виждано. Защо това е така, ще разберете в хода на нашия разговор. Името му обаче няма да скрием и аз се радвам да ви представя моя гост Пол Попов, син на Харалан Попов, известен и в България, а и по целия свят с автобиографичната си книга "Изтезаван заради вярата си". Hello. 22 years have passed since the fall of communism. Many young people here don't know, they cannot even imagine what was back then. So, but for you, communism marked your life forever. Would you tell us about that time? Would you tell us first who was your father and what happened to him?
I'm glad to say that I'm a Bulgarian. I was, however, fairly young in Bulgaria, and unfortunately my Swedish mother, who was a missionary to Bulgaria, insisted that I learn Swedish, and that is why I apologize for my Bulgarian language is not very good. My father is Haralán Popov. He is from the Suhindol area in Bulgaria. He went to be a pastor in Rusa and on to go to Bible school in Gdansk, Danzig, as it was in that time, in the Russian Bible school, and then later in England at the Hampstead Bible College, where he was learning the English language as well as doing his Bible school work.
When was that?
This was in the 1936, 1937, and that's when he met my Swedish mother, Ruth Popov, and they married, and the question was, the rumors about war was in the air, and should they return to Bulgaria or should they wait till the war was over? My father said, no, I've been away in Bible school for 5 years and I want to go back to Bulgaria to continue the pastoral ministry, which at that time was in Burgas, where he built the Pentecostal church. The revival was, in my opinion, the main reason why the communists had their eyes on him. The church was very small at that time, only 100 members when he arrived in 1939, and 5-6 years later it was over 1,000 members, and the baptism was taking place in the Black Sea on a regular basis, and many young people became Christians and became baptized. This of course was not something that the communist leadership liked at all. When he moved to Sofia to be a pastor of his duty was to be minister for evangelism in the country. So he traveled a lot in Bulgaria and did revival meetings and had gospel meetings in church planting and so forth. In this regard, the communists had their eyes on him together with other people, many pastors. There was a trial, and it's very important to understand that they were not just trying to kill them like so many other Orthodox brothers and sisters who were killed instantly, but with the evangelical church they had a special plan, and that was to destroy the church by embarrassing the church. They took my father and put him in prison. 8 months he was tortured in such a way that he will confess that he was a spy and not a Christian. And after 8 months they actually were successful in bringing his brain to a degree of that it was like a tape recorder. You tell him, if you say this, we will give you a little bit of bread to eat. And he was willing to say that after, but his brain was totally empty, and it was easy for them to tell him exactly what to say. So at the trial in 1948 here in Sofia at the main courthouse, he stood up together with the other pastors and confessed that he was a spy for America and England.
Yes, we know this was the first and the heaviest of all trials, and many of those pastors received death sentences.
Life sentence for Zyapkov and others. Father received 15 years in communist prison, and it was not just a prison. Belene for Bulgarians are well known. You can compare it to any Siberian camps where people, my father told me once that the Belene island is a fairly large island, but when the water froze and the water level went up, all the 12,000 prisoners had to meet in the highest point on the island. And the ice was not strong enough to walk on, so they had to stand side by side like sardines, and many of them in January with the temperature below 20 died standing up.
I remember when I was reading the book, some of the things sound impossible for a human mind to grasp, but yet he survived.
Yes.
13 years of his life were taken away, but he didn't become bitter.
Yeah.
What do you think helped him?
It is the faith. He was an extraordinary person when it comes to faith. We usually say we are soldiers in the Lord's army, but he was a general. And in this regard, God gave him something that I am very envious. I wish that we could all increase our faith in the same way. I think that's why the book Tortured for His Faith is so important and real, because it is not easy to be a person of faith. It is actually almost like some of us have a gift from God to have the faith and to work with it and strengthen it, and through temptations and difficulties our faith is growing.
In 1961 your father was released. Do you remember how did that happen?
We lived in Sweden at that time with my sister Rhoda and my mom Ruth, and he wanted to join us in Sweden, of course. We were writing letters to Khrushchev, we write letters to United Nations, we write letters to the Red Cross, to the Swedish government. I personally pleaded with the Swedish government, went up to the minister and cried, asking him to intervene on family reunification issues, and nothing helped. The members of the congregation, Baba Mara, especially Baba Maria, who lived in the same attic as my father, she said, don't worry, God has told me you are leaving for Sweden. And he came back over and over again and said, if the secret police told him that if you and your family write one more letter to Khrushchev or to any of the government institution pleading on your behalf, we will put you back in Belene. He didn't know what to do. He referred this to us and said, be careful, I don't know what to advise, what to do. But Baba Maria said, oh, she just laughed. They don't know what God has told me. In November, a year later, she was right. They called him up, apologized, Tavarish Popov, we are very, very sorry what we have done to you. Here is a passport. You can join your family in Sweden. New Year's Eve, at the exact moment, 12 o'clock midnight, the church bells in Sweden ringing in the new year. Beautiful church bells, just like in Bulgaria. Dad came down. He was only 2 passengers on the plane on New Year's Eve. He was one of them. Funny overcoat, old hat, looked like a man from the 100 years ago. But he was my dad. And we had a first chance in 15 years to hug each other. It was a moment that I will never forget, of course. The first thing he asked, the next day we walked in Stockholm, outside the King's Palace, beautiful place, was 1st of January, sun was shining, winter, a lot of snow. Paul, in Bulgaria there is no Bibles. Where can I print some? That was the beginning of our mission work. He didn't speak Swedish. I had to help him with everything. Where to print, how to do next radio program, Transworld Radio. I want to broadcast the gospel to Bulgaria. I love Bulgarians. I love the communists. I don't like communism, but I love the communists, and they need to know that there is a God who loves them. So the missionary work started immediately, and we found a Bulgarian Bible in Israel, reprinted it, and I was in charge of what we call the distribution of Bible. Some people call it Bible smuggling. Mm-hmm. But
how did you do that?
We brought Bibles into the various communist countries, not only Bulgaria, but Romania, Russia, Albania, and other places. And on the way out, we took samizdat literature, information of what family is in, who's in prison, what is the family, how many members, how many children do they have, and what is their need. And of course we publicized the information so that churches in America, in England, in Sweden, in Scandinavia, and in Europe would know who to pray for. An intelligent prayer is more important than a general prayer. Yes. So we know that we publicized all the pictures and names of those who were in prison, just like my father's.
What do you remember from that time? You haven't seen your father for 15 years, and when he came back, what was changed? What was changed in him and in you?
Well, first of all, the prayers that I had done for 15 years, every evening with my mom, we prayed it at the bedside. God, bring my daddy home. God, help my daddy to survive the prison term. That prayer did not need to be prayed again. After 15 years, God answered the prayer. It was a strange feeling to have a father, to have a dad. It was
after so many years.
It was unreal. It was like I was in a dream. Is this real? It's hard to imagine. And he started to write a book. My mom translated from Bulgarian to Swedish, and the Swedish secretary typed it up. And he was called to speak in many churches in many different countries to come and share. And so our life became very busy.
Your father has come back to Bulgaria in 1988, just a little bit shortly after, before he died. Unfortunately, he could not see the change. How was that?
He was a Swedish subject as well as Bulgarian. He had a Swedish passport, and I promised him, after Mom's passing away in 1985, that I will take you to Bulgaria. I was a very bold promise because he was on the blacklist. He was a bad man in the communist files. But so was I. I had been banned because I had done something that they didn't like, and they found out who I really was, and they put me on the blacklist at the border. Swedish subjects do not need a visa for Bulgaria at that time, and we took a charter flight to Burgas. Well, as soon as they saw our 2 Swedish passports, they said, please stand beside, and all the 100 other passengers were passing through, and I realized, there is something going on here. So the gentleman took our passport and went to some room and started to shout in the telephone, talking to Sofia or someplace. And 1 hour later, after we're sitting there praying, hoping that Father would be allowed to go to his native country that he has cried for and wanted to visit again
that
so
was
much.
His dream,
he was over 80 years of age, and he was physically fairly weak, but he wanted definitely to come to Bulgaria. The chief of the customs police there came back and said, Paul, you cannot enter in Bulgaria. Oh, I said, that is sad. But Harlan, we allow you to come. and he went to the Burgas church where he had built and enjoyed. He was sitting down in the seat, and people started to look at him. Isn't that who they thought it was? It wasn't. And Pastor Victor Virchev allowed him to say a few words where he was sitting and standing up. Father had a whole week in Bulgaria, visiting Shumen and Veliko Trnovo and Krasnogradište, where he is born, and Suindol and other places, and came back with a very special gift for me. I met him in the Stockholm airport, and we flew back to Los Angeles. He had received by somebody a handkerchief, a very old handkerchief, and he said, "Look what I got." I said, "What? Dirty handkerchief? Why do you give that to me?" "Well, look at it." And there was a text, "Don't worry about us. God is taking care of us." And so forth. And that was with the laundry, in the pocket of the laundry, to my mother in Sofia. We used to live in the Rakovsky Street here in Sofia. And when the laundry was coming to us, because in the trial they wanted them to have nice tie, a nice shirt, a nice suit, so they looked like they have never been tortured. They looked like they were well-treated prisoners. And in the pocket my mom found this handkerchief with a message on. And now somebody in Bulgaria had kept that since 1948 till 1988. So many years, and we have it, and I have it on the wall, framed up in my office.
What do you think about what you see now in Bulgaria?
I feel that Bulgaria has become a little bit too much interested in economy and materialism. I'm worried about the young people not realizing the spiritual dimensions of a man's life, and that people are thinking of how can I have more gadgets, and how can I have more items, how can I be like the West. And I would like the Bulgarian young people to know that to care for one another, to be a best friend of your neighbor, and not have selfish motives, but being generous and be willing to give of yourself, of your time, of your finances, to help other people in need, is a very great blessing. And I think Jesus taught us to do that, and he was a very wise man. He was the Son of God.
Уважаеми зрители, това беше Пол Попов. И оставаме с неговото послание да правим добро, да даваме от себе си, защото това е благословението, което нашия Господ Исус Христос ни е завещал.